Welcome to A.B. Ford's Crime Whispers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment, letting us know where you're listening from. For privacy and safety reasons, the names and identifying details in these stories have been changed. The events, however, are based on real reports and documented cases. Now, let's get into it. UK, 1999. A beloved TV presenter shot on her doorstep. Was it a random act or a targeted hit? She was the golden voice of the evening news, a beacon of calm in the chaos of daily headlines. Her name was Julia Dane, known throughout the UK for her poise, warmth, and fearless journalism. On a quiet spring morning in 1999, the peace of her West London neighborhood was shattered with a single gunshot. Julia was found collapsed on her doorstep, a bullet through her head, her morning plans cut short by sudden violence. There was no sign of forced entry, no robbery, just a single, chilling execution that left a nation stunned and grieving. How could someone so loved, so seemingly safe, be taken out in broad daylight? The investigation spread like wildfire, cameras rolling as detectives combed through her past. Was it a fan, a jealous lover, or something darker? At first, all eyes turned to a mentally ill loner named Barry Green, who lived nearby and had an obsession with crime shows. He was arrested, tried, and convicted, but cracks appeared in the case. His alibi was shaky, the evidence circumstantial. Years later, his conviction was overturned, and the mystery deepened. Whispers began swirling. Had Julia been silenced? Some believed her work on high-profile exposés made her a target. Others pointed to jealous rivals, or even international connections too dangerous to name. More suspects were questioned. Leads came and went, but no smoking gun ever surfaced. The case remains unsolved, a question mark hanging over a woman whose only weapon was her voice. Julia Dane's murder wasn't just a tragedy. It became a ghost story whispered through British tabloids and police files alike. Because sometimes the most public lives end in the most private of betrayals. And justice, like a story half told, is left waiting at the door. The 2008, Georgia. A hiking trip turns deadly. How did a serial killer evade capture for so long? It was New Year's Day, the air crisp and clean in the Georgia mountains, when a young woman set out on a solo hike with her loyal dog by her side. She was adventurous, confident, used to the trails, but this time she never came back. Her name was Lauren, and when she didn't return home, her friends and family knew something was wrong. Search teams swarmed the mountain, helicopters circling, posters going up within hours. Then they found her dog, alive, alone, and still leashed. It was the first sign that Lauren hadn't just gotten lost. She had been taken. Witnesses reported seeing an older man with her on the trail that day. He looked ordinary, calm, a fellow hiker, but what no one knew then was that he was a drifter with a deadly past, a serial killer hiding in plain sight. He had charmed Lauren into conversation, maybe even walked beside her for a while, but when she let her guard down, he attacked. What followed was 4 days of terror. He kept her alive, moving from spot to spot, trying to gain her trust while plotting her end. She fought him, resisted, tried to survive, but he was was ruthless. In the end, he killed her and attempted to hide the evidence in the woods. His plan might have worked, except for one mistake. Lauren had fought back hard, and her resistance left behind clues. DNA, witnesses, a timeline. The man was arrested just days later, his car filled with chilling tools, knives, rope, bleach. It wasn't his first kill. In fact, authorities believed he may have been responsible for a string of unsolved murders stretching across the southeast. For years, he'd roamed the country under the radar, targeting women in isolated spots, killing without a pattern. Lauren was the one who changed everything. Her fierce will to survive gave police the evidence they needed to finally end his spree. Now behind bars for life, the killer's true body count may never be known. But one thing is certain. Lauren's bravery brought an end to a nightmare years in the making, because sometimes the most dangerous predators don't stalk the streets. They walk quietly through the woods. Orlando, Florida. A toddler disappears. A mother's lies unravel. It began with a phone call. A panicked grandmother reporting that her 2-year-old granddaughter hadn't been seen in over a month. Her daughter kept making excuses, stories that changed every time. First, the nanny had the child. Then they were traveling. Then, silence. The child's name was Lily, a wide-eyed little girl with curly hair and the kind of giggle that lit up rooms. But behind the scenes, something was deeply wrong. Her mother, Vanessa, was out partying, getting tattoos, living like she didn't have a care in the world, all while her daughter was missing. As the investigation kicked off, every lie Vanessa told began to crumble. There was no nanny. The job she claimed to have didn't exist, and slowly, a horrifying question took shape. Had Lily ever stood a chance? The police found Vanessa's car, and inside it, the smell of death. Cadaver dogs confirmed it. Traces of decomposition, a strand of Lily's hair, but still, no body. Vanessa said she didn't know anything. She smiled in mugshots. She cried on camera. But the world wasn't convinced. The case went to trial. The entire nation glued to every moment. Prosecutors painted her as a cold, selfish mother who wanted her freedom more than her child. The defense spun a tale of dysfunction, of trauma, of a tragic accident covered up by fear. But the biggest twist of all, a not guilty verdict. Vanessa walked free, no conviction, no closure, no justice. Months later, Lily's remains were found in a wooded area not far from the family home. Her tiny body wrapped in a blanket, stuffed inside a trash bag, a child discarded like garbage, her final moments still a mystery. The case became one of the most polarizing in American history. People still argue about what happened, but one thing remains certain. A little girl vanished, and no one was ever held accountable, because sometimes the scariest monsters don't hide in the shadows. They smile right into the camera. 2009, St. Martin's, Missouri. A 9-year-old disappears walking home. What led a teenage neighbor to commit the unthinkable? It was supposed to be a short walk, just a few houses down, in the safety of a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. A 9-year-old girl vanished on her way home after playing with a friend. No screams, no struggle, just silence. Panic set in immediately. Police flooded the area. Neighbors searched fields and woods by flashlight, and her name echoed through the night. But what no one knew was that her fate had already been sealed, and her killer was far closer than anyone imagined. Behind one of those neighborhood doors sat a teenage girl, 15 years old, calm, detached, hiding a secret so dark it stunned the nation. For 2 days, the community clung to hope, but the girl, quietly unraveling, cracked. She led investigators into the woods. There, beneath a shallow grave, was the child's lifeless body, strangled, her innocence stolen not by a stranger, but by someone she called a neighbor. The motive, not revenge, not rage. The teen later told investigators she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. No empathy, no remorse. A child, murdered by a child. The courtroom became a place of disbelief. The killer sat silent, cold, while the victim's family sobbed just feet away. The public demanded answers, but none made sense. How could a teenage girl plot such horror, dig a grave beforehand, and carry it out like it was nothing more than a plan? The judge called it one of the most chilling cases they'd ever seen. The girl was tried as an adult and sentenced to life. To this day, the story is remembered not just for its tragedy, but for the terrifying question it left behind. What darkness can live in someone so young? And can evil be born behind the face of a child? to 2011, Long Island, New York. Bodies on the beach. A community in fear. Was the Long Island serial killer finally be unmasked? It started with a missing woman, a young escort who vanished after meeting a client in a quiet neighborhood near the New York shoreline. Police searched the dense brush near the coast, hoping to find a trace. Instead, they uncovered a nightmare. Not one body, but 4, all wrapped in burlap, spaced evenly along the edge of Gilgo Beach. Days later, more remains surfaced. 8, 10, 11. Each victim shared chilling similarities. Most were sex workers, all discarded like trash in the sand. As the body count rose, so did the panic. Whispers of a serial killer swept through Long Island. The beach, once a place of peace, became a graveyard. But whoever was behind the murders vanished like a ghost into the sea air. Leads came and went. A list of suspects grew. Theories exploded. Was it a lone predator with surgical precision? Someone with law enforcement knowledge? The pattern was too clean, too cold. Investigators chased tips from across the state. A disgraced cop, a jilted lover, a businessman with secrets. But every lead unraveled. The killer seemed to know when to stop, when to stay quiet. For years the trail went cold, and families waited. Mothers, sisters, friends, all haunted by silence and sand. Then, more than a decade later, the case cracked open. Advances in DNA, cell tower data, and relentless detective work led to a breakthrough. A new name surfaced. Someone hiding in plain sight. A man with ties to the area. A seemingly average life masking monstrous secrets. He was arrested, and the headlines returned with a vengeance. But was he the only one? Or just the beginning of the end? To this day, the dunes of Gilgo still hold secrets. Some victims remain unidentified, some questions unanswered, because the beach may wash away footprints, but it never forgets the bodies buried beneath its waves. To 2012, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A college student found dead, a haunting note left behind. She was the heart of her campus, a bright, driven student with dreams bigger than the small town she came from. Everyone loved her energy, her smile, her future. But on a September morning in 2012, all of that promise ended in a single horrifying moment. Her roommate came home to a nightmare, the apartment in disarray, and her friend beaten to death, blood staining the sheets and floor. But it wasn't just the brutality of the scene that chilled investigators. It was the note, scribbled ominously near the body. "I'm not stupid, bitch." A signature of anger, of rage, of someone she likely knew. The police were flooded with theories. Was it her ex-boyfriend, known for jealousy and outbursts? Was it someone she'd rejected? Or a stranger who had slipped through the cracks? Detectives dug through her phone, her social media, her relationships. They collected DNA. They released audio of a frantic 911 call, but still, no arrests. And that note, crude, haunting, stuck in everyone's mind like a curse. Friends on campus walked a little faster. Parents called their daughters every night, because if the girl who lit up every room wasn't safe, who was? For 9 long years, the case went cold, but the evidence sat quietly, waiting. DNA under fingernails, hair strands, small overlooked clues. Then, in 2021, a break, a name, a suspect who had lived nearby, had connections to her circle, and had left behind the one thing he couldn't erase, his DNA. He was arrested and charged, finally bringing a measure of justice to a community that had never stopped grieving. Her story still echoes through Chapel Hill, her life, her smile, her strength. But so does the note, because even now, the question remains, what pushed someone to turn rage into murder? And how many more haunting truths are hidden behind sweet smiles and locked apartment doors? Thanks for listening to another episode of Crime Whispers. If you felt the chill, be sure to follow, rate, and share. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and never ignore a whisper.